I befuddle the mind, one word at a time, and my presence is known high and low. I guard a great treasure from this who would know, from those who would die simply for gold. I felled great kings in the hands of fools, with a promise of jewels and golden rings, spilling from the lips of the Sphinx. I robbed the rash and reward the cool. What could I be? It's simple. I'm a riddle, you see. Well, it seems like it's time for me to take my anti-rhyming pills. Sorry about that. I can't help it. It's hereditary. Sometimes I just can't stop rhyming, and it's pretty scary. I'm Nik Coffee, and you're listening to Ministerium Radio, the extra-dimensional radio show. The first entry of tonight is an entry from Patazqualés, right near the Mexican border. As I've come to understand, it's a place of music and horror. Let's not tarry, let's begin. Hopefully soon the pills will set in. A short story from a man named Corey Pickman, an insomniac and dream denizen. My name is Corey Pickman, and I'm the sole inhabitant of Patazqualés. At least that's what I thought. I've accepted my life and the turmoil in it. All I can do at this point in time is share my story with you, with anyone who will believe. It all started about 2 weeks after I got here. As we've discussed per our letters, I aim to live here by choice. I came to really enjoy life here. I love the music that rides on the wind, seemingly coming from nowhere in particular. I was surprised at first why I was alone here. You see, gentlemen, I was never alone here. On the 22nd, as I was getting ready for my day, I heard the voices clearer, much clearer. I stepped to the window and saw not one, but 100, maybe 200 people, all dancing and singing. This was quite the shock to me. I thought I was alone in this quaint town. This wasn't my cup of tea, not at all. I've always been a loner, and I've always needed my solitary time. It gave me the opportunity to work on myself. I watched from my apartment for a spell, waiting for the end of whatever festival must have been happening. But the end didn't come. Eventually, I had enough of the revelry and shut my windows in an attempt to silence my new, bothersome neighbors. I tried to write a new story, of the short variety, but I found myself distracted by the jackanapes below. I stayed in that entire day, and the dancers and musicians below seemed to never tire. To me, at least, it felt like they had no grasp of time. They didn't need to rest or even communicate properly. The largest vein in my forehead was on the brink of bursting when the hour struck 9. I could barely hear my otherwise very noisome clock strike its bell. So out of my window I went. I stumbled to my balcony in a fit of rage, a fire that lasted for all but a few seconds. As I saw what was happening, the sky was a deep and volatile purple, with 2 green moons hanging above the small town of Patazqualés. The ground was slick and muddy with blood. The violence I had witnessed went beyond words I can comprehend, but suffice it to say, it was pure madness. I was stuck in a catatonic state, watching the people below tear each other asunder. They rent one another. I thought I saw enormous beings flying in the clouds above, but I came to realize that I was gazing upon the tendrils of a massive being. This being, besides having a nature to which no words befit, was there and somewhere else entirely at the same time. It was as if this monstrous being was staring into a watery surface, under which I stood in terror. The people, they weren't truly people anymore. They were more akin to beasts. They were killing each other, men and women, strong and weak. Some banded together, some fell victim to these bands, and some made short work of them. They were littering the main road, the town square, everywhere, with carcasses. I will not make any attempt to fool you, or make secretive my true feelings at this moment. I was experiencing terror, unlike anything I had experienced. My heart was beating as though I was sprinting, but I couldn't be more still. My hands were dripping sweat, and stiff as though rigor mortis was setting in. As to other things, I won't speak of them. Suffice it to say, I was terrorized. It finally came down to the last man, or rather woman, standing. She had evaded death and dealt plenty of it. I could see from my balcony that she had blood in her eyes, but despite this, she gazed at the twin moons with a sickening smile. I was afraid my heart would simply stop out of fear then, as I saw her kneel on the bloodied ground, naked, arms stretched into the foul air. As she did this, an enormous tentacle reached down from the clouds. This extremity of what I can't dare dream wrapped itself around her many times over and lifted this woman into the sky. Then it was over. The twin moons disappeared. The sky's purple color faded into its usual midnight blue. The stars came back. Everything that happened disappeared. Everything except the bodies. I spent the next 2 weeks burying people, like it was my job. The only reward I got from my work was a steady increase in living standards. For myself, anyway. I earned myself a hardened stomach, and should I decide to leave town, I could find easy work as a funeral worker or a grave digger. I gave them all proper Christian burials. That's what I did the first time, anyway. 6 weeks later, it happened again. This time I hid in my bathroom until I knew it was thoroughly over. I wasn't thrilled, but I had done this before, and knew I could do it again. That is, until I noticed their faces. These people, I buried all these people. These people were all lying in proper Christian graves, and yet here they were, freshly dead. Not a single new face. You may disdain me for what I did next. I burned them. This, I thought, was obviously some kind of cosmic fluke, a mistake, if you will. Someone, somewhere, must have made a mistake. The smell was unbearable for a few days. At this point, that familiar stench lingers in and on everything. It's everywhere. I don't expect you to come save me or come watch the event, but I simply implore you to believe there's more out there. There are twin emerald moons and searing purple skies. There are existences such as my own. Thank you. That is some story, Corey. Yeah, I don't feel too good about this. He doesn't even know how trapped he is. I know what you're thinking. He took his pills, but he's still rhyming instead? Yes, listener, I took out my anti-soliloquy IV and flushed my meds. This next entry is a short story by a man named Kenji. In 1973, I knew a man who sold koi fish. Koi fish are an interesting breed, I can tell you. Koi fish have interested many people from all cultures for many, many years. Koi breeding is an extreme amount of work, which sometimes yields very little pay. Saburo was one such merchant, and his fish sold worse and worse by the day. Saburo came to me one day, drunk as one can be, and asked me, "Why are my koi so ugly? Why does no one want them?" He showed me his koi, and I admitted to him that I found them beautiful, completely white, pale as the moon, and graceful in their movements. I found them to be enchanting. This, however, is not what the people want. They want spots, colors, vibrant colors. The red and white of the Japanese flag shining bright on a glorious fat fish. Saburo's koi were much too thin and pale to be in a competition, but if I had a garden at the time, I would have dug out a pond so they could live peacefully in my care, instead of the chain-smoking, crying Saburo, who would likely depress the fish. One day he invited me over and persuaded me to a terrible thing. I was low on money at the time, and rent was coming in just a few days. I couldn't refuse, even when he stated the nature of our business. He wanted me to help him paint the fish, to be precise. He could not hold a koi and paint it at the same time, so he needed someone to paint as he held the fish down. For a day we worked, painting the sides and backs of his beautiful pale fish. Even so, I tried my best to make them look like the vibrant koi that win so many awards. For this was his plan all along. The next day was the regional koi breeding competition. Judges would come from other towns and play the role of judges as they inspect for size, vibrancy, color, and grace. He was finally going to enter, and he was going to win. When I arrived at his home, I could hear him crying from outside. I welcomed myself in, and I found him in a most sad state. The stench of dead fish was starting to waft. The paints had killed the poor creatures, and he found himself unable to even take care of their little bodies. I found it an awful shame, and it is this, the state of life, that awful shames bring with them lessons, especially lessons like this. And if you don't quite follow me, you should ask a pale white koi what it thinks of my story. I am sure it will know what to say. That was great, Kenji. That was a great entry. I'm guessing the lesson is beauty, and where it is, probably in the eyes of the person looking at it. I also think that's all the time we have for tonight. Rhyming with you was a total delight. And remember, whether you're a koi, dragon, or chthonic, there is always room for you at Ministerium Miskatonic. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Ministerium Miskatonic Radio. If you have a story you'd like us to read on the show, you can go ahead and contact us with the email in the description. And if you haven't already, go ahead and punch all those buttons below this video to be notified of future videos. That's all for now. Thank you.